Hey everybody, it's Linda Lippin here from Linda Lippin Pilates, the Pilates Teacher Mastermind, and the Strong Bones Osteoporosis Program for women over 50. You know, 2021 has really just been a shitstorm, let's just face it. And now we're moving into 2022. I know that there are a whole host of you out there, whether you are Pilates professionals or do other things, who are still trying to make decisions about moving forward in your life and in your business. I'm still hearing from Pilates teachers who are trying to decide whether they should add an online component to their business. I'm still hearing from people who are wondering whether they should sell the equipment they've had in storage for 2 years. Just in case they might want to open another studio again, even though they think not. And then there's a whole lot of other decisions and really important decisions that we all have to make in our lives, but especially around this time of year and the beginning of next year. And we have all these voices in our heads and all these voices in our lives and all these voices in the media that are trying to tell us what to do. And if there's something that I have really embraced as part of my experience as a coaching client, it in fact is learning how to really use my brain and work with my brain in a way that allows me to make decisions and move forward in ways that are more aligned for me and for my life. And that is a gift that I would actually like to give all of you. And that is why I am here today with my friend Krista Kehoe. Now, Krista is a certified life coach from the Life Coaching School, and we've discussed Krista. Many of my favorite coaches and most effective coaches who I have learned from have come out of Brooks Life Coaching School. It's just a kind of hotbed of awesomeness and seems to attract great people and turn out coaches who do wonderfully transformative work. Yes. So Krista is a certified coach. It's so funny because I love even your tagline is, let's make some powerful decisions, my friend. Yeah. Let's do it. Krista primarily works with female entrepreneurs and women who need to, again, move forward in their lives, that need to really get their brains straight and kind of figure out how to work with themselves to create awesome lives, awesome businesses, awesome families, and help create awesome communities. Because great people create great places to be in and live in and learn in. Krista is also, I'm saying it, a member of the Advanced Women's Expert Network.
Yes.
So, if you've been thinking, how's Linda meeting all these people? Where are all these fabulous people coming from? They're coming from there. And you could also join us and also be connected to all these great people. So, hi, Krista. How are you today?
Hey, Linda. Thanks for having me on. I love that. That's such a fun intro.
We start with shitstorm, we end with awesomeness, and here we are.
We're just going to keep it all real, right?
Well, we kind of have to. I think I was talking to a client this morning, teaching online, and we were talking about the sad state of truth and facts.
Yeah.
And reality in our culture right now. We were talking about the sad state of critical reasoning and the sad state of just people being able to add it. I mean, if we can't sit down and make a decision about whether something that we see online is fact or fiction, then how are we exactly supposed to decide about major life choices?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? And we all kind of get to decide that. And one of the things that I do in my coaching is I teach all of my clients, one-to-one and group, how to distill out what just the facts are, right? Like if you can't prove it in a court of law, if all 7 billion people plus on the planet would not agree, then it's just not a fact. So it's one of the things I use to help us get to the decision-making point. But you're right, like a lot of things are debatable.
Exactly. And we seem to have gotten into a place of relativism where everything's debatable. And I do feel like that creates a lot of internal discord, actually, and a lot of internal confusion.
Yeah. Yeah. Confusion is not a great place to make powerful decisions from. Like, let's just be honest. When you're feeling something like confused or overwhelmed or anxious, right? Or obligated. Ooh, I hear a lot of women make decisions from a feeling of obligation, right? Or regret. Okay. These are places that lots of us make decisions from. And we don't end up showing up the way that we intend to when we make decisions from those kinds of emotions. So I know you're familiar with the Life Coach School and sort of the idea of the model. And it's one of the equations that I use as I work with my life coaching clients. But we teach and we use a model that basically categorizes things into one of 5 places, like it's a circumstance, a thought, a feeling, an action, or a result. And I very much work with the thought piece, right? Like I'm a mindset coach. I don't tell you what to do. I help you figure out how to get yourself to do the things that you know are necessary to get the results you say you want to create. So, because here's the reality, like if you just want to know how to do something, you can probably Google it.
Right.
Right. The trick is getting yourself to show up and be the woman who like does the thing she said she was going to do to create the results she said she wanted to create. So I work primarily with the thoughts that help drive your emotions so that you are then compelled to take the action that you need to take to get the results you said you wanted.
And that's how you kind of parse that out into your 4 steps.
Yeah, so that's just one little piece that I address within the 4-pillar process. The 4-pillar process of the decision-making process is very simple. It's very clean. It's like step 1 is determine where you are now, where you want to go. Like what's that gap? Okay, so identify your gap. Step 2 is eliminate confusion. So what we were just talking about, like making decisions from a certain space, a certain feeling. And I'll give you a little hint, you guys. If you're thinking about like, well, I'm not sure, or, well, this is all very confusing or overwhelming. The question to ask yourself is, who do I want to become more of in the process of going from here to there? So as I close that gap, who do I want to become? Okay. And then the way to get your clean answer there is why. So if you're thinking about, I want to do this because so-and-so will then think X, Y, or Z about me, that's not a clean reason why, right? So I go into that a lot
because
more.
we can't control what those other people are feeling.
No, I mean, and why? Like that would be exhausting. A lot of us try to control that. Like we're definitely programmed throughout our whole lives to care what other people think, but ultimately what it comes down to is who do you want to show up as? Who do you want to be in this life and in this journey from here to there in that closing the gap, right? So step 1, identify the gap. Step 2, eliminate confusion. Step 3 is dissolve resistance. So in that step 2, you're really using this video in your brain about who you're going to become and how amazing that's going to be. Okay. But then step 3, I'm like, okay, let's take off the rose-colored glasses because guess what? There's a reason you actually don't want to go from here to there. It's too hard. I don't know how. They're going to think X, Y, and Z about me, right? Like all those things. And then each of those, we just identify, like, let's not sweep them under the rug and pretty think our way to closing the gap. Let's actually get really clear on what those obstacles are for you and create strategy to overcome those obstacles. Okay. And that's a lot of the one-to-one work I do. Mm-hmm. And then finally, step 4 is cultivate impeccable self-trust all along the way, which is the piece that most women don't have. We have been conditioned for decades, like we started with the conditioning from parents, like get external approval, right? Then we went to
Mm-hmm.
school for how many years? Some of us, like, if we have advanced degrees, like longer than 20, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we sought external approval from instructors. And then maybe it was from our mentors or from coworkers or from our bosses, right? Or leaders at work. And maybe it's from your communities. And so we've gotten really good at seeking this external approval and external validation. But what we've forgotten along the way, oftentimes, or what's gotten buried or pushed aside, is that alignment with who you really are and what you really think and what's important to you, like your priorities. So I teach women how to align with that again and to trust that they can show up for themselves with these decisions. It all goes hand in hand.
Right, because I think, culturally, women look at other women to make decisions. I mean, Glennon Doyle tells a story in Untamed, which I just finished.
It's a great book. Loved it.
It is. We love Glennon. We love Glennon. We love Abby. We love Amanda. Let's just say it. We love them all. But one of the, she tells that story about having a bunch of kids over, right? Mm-hmm. And she kind of strolls in as like the cool mom to see if anybody's hungry and if they need food, because she wants to check in on them, but doesn't want to be like, too much. And they don't even look up. All the boys are like, yep, we're hungry. All the girls look at each other.
Yes. Are you hungry?
And then they unconsciously select a representative.
Yeah.
Who looks up and goes, no, we're fine. Mm-hmm. No, we're fine. And there's, a whole lot of conditioning that goes into that, a whole lot of not wanting to eat in front of the boys, a whole lot. I mean, I was always one of those, look, when I was in graduate school, okay, and I was dating, I was like a broke graduate student. So I was going to eat on my dates. If you were taking me to a nice restaurant, I was eating that nice food. Mm-hmm. And I remember several dates literally looking at me and saying, it's so exciting that you're eating.
Yeah.
Like, we're so happy that you're actually enjoying the food that we're paying for, right?
Yeah.
Because we've dated women who we bring out to these great restaurants and they order a salad and they pick at it. And we have a feeling they ate before. And that, in fact, is what, so, at least in my generation, and I'm assuming still now, that so many of us actually did, because we didn't want to be eating a lot. My husband just said, it's one of the things I loved about you was we could be like, go out and eat.
Yeah, I'm an eater.
You would actually eat the food.
So I relate to that. But, it's really what we're talking about here is like a tribal mentality, and it's our primal wiring. So in all of the teaching that I do and all the coaching I do, I teach women how to utilize their brains to your benefit, because guess what? You're going to have your brain your whole life, right? So we might as well learn how to maximize its power instead of letting it work against us. And our brain primarily has like two channels, okay? Channel one is primal, all the primitive wiring that works off the motivational triad, which its only job is survival. So reduce effort, reduce risk, find pleasure right now. Okay, so that's how you're going to normally defer. That's normally going to be what you talk yourself into eventually, even when your prefrontal cortex, we'll call it channel 2, the more evolved part of your brain, is like, oh, I really want to close this gap. I want to do this thing in my life. I want to achieve this goal, right? And as soon as you decide, like, yep, this is the thing I'm going to do, you notice channel 1, primal brain, shows up and is like, oh, that's a terrible idea. Like, they're going to think that I'm an imposter. They're going to think I don't know anything. They're going to write all these things.
Right.
And so you see
nobody's going to buy anything from me, and we're just going to end up in the dark starving.
Oh, it's going to be awful. Yeah, why would we do any of that? But when you're talking about like these girls that Glennon Doyle talked about in Untamed, right? Like, it's really just deferring to primal wiring, which is let's be safe, which is as long as I'm in this group and I belong and I don't stick out, I will be okay, right? And there was some truth to that evolution-wise, but when we're talking about advancing like in who we are and who we show up as in this world and the contribution that we can make to, communities, to our world in a way that we can have a net positive impact out there, then you have to be able to master your brain and move beyond the primal wiring. Okay. So we have to start recognizing the voice that comes up on channel 1 and go, oh, it's okay. Like, I don't have to be afraid of that. Here's why it's here. And then with understanding and compassion, we create safety for our nervous system with that trust I talk about, which is a whole process, but very accessible. And then you can just move through it. Right. So that's what we do.
And that's kind of like what, even like what Michael Singer talks about when he says, observe that voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a piece of you that can observe that voice.
Yeah.
Which lets you know that you are not solely.
Yeah. I think Eckhart Tolle also says something like that, like, be the watcher, right? Be the observer. So like everything I teach, it's been said a gazillion times before. You can find all of this information elsewhere. None of this is new, right? Like, I've just packaged up what works for this niche, right? Like, I work with ambitious women so they can make powerful decisions, all while accessing self-trust. And I do happen to work with a lot of solopreneur moms, probably because I am one, right? So, but I don't only work with solopreneur moms.
There are, I want to bring this back to a kind of very real kind of thing that's going on in the Pilates world. And it's something that's been ongoing for more than a decade, and is just resurfacing now, because as we know, if we don't deal with shit and we just keep letting it go, it just comes back, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of stuck in it again. So for, Joseph Pilates created this work in the early 20th century. And now there are, thousands and thousands and thousands of Pilates instructors in the world. We have been through a lawsuit over the trademark. Yes. It turns out that Joseph Pilates had trademarked his work. He never really dealt with the trademark. Somebody bought the trademark and immediately started shooting out cease and desist orders to studios. Not, hey, I bought the trademark, maybe we should all get together and kind of figure out what we want to do as a community to have Pilates be, coherent, but just, you stop, you can't use the word. So when I first opened my studios, Krista, I couldn't say I taught Pilates. I taught exercises based on the work of Joseph Pilates, taken in the historical context only. Seriously, like, everything was Pilates based on the work of Joseph Pilates. Nobody could actually, unless you redid your entire certification, yes, with this group. And then they became now, the sort of holders on of the Pilates archives of Joseph Pilates, stuff that still exists. And, everyone was kind of playing happily together for a little while. It's been, about a decade or so. And all of a sudden, people started getting cease and desist letters and getting their Instagram accounts shut down, and getting blocked. So I woke up one day and suddenly all of these people, some of whom I considered friends and colleagues, some of whom I've actually referred clients to, blocked me.
Wow.
And they blocked me because I am not on the side of holding all the archives hostage and shutting people down who might want to deal with the history of Joseph Pilates, right? I'm not into that. And then what started to happen was, and I find this very passive aggressive behavior, is people would take screenshots in their private groups of what was being said about us and then DM the screenshots. And I'm like, and for me, I just deleted them all and said, just don't even send them to me. I'm not in the group. I don't care. I don't care what they have to say about me. My clients are happy. I'm happy. I'm teaching well. People in my groups are fine. Like, I'm not, I don't care what they're saying about me. But unfortunately, everyone now has to like be involved in this drama of, are we classical Pilates teachers? Are we contemporary Pilates teachers? What school of contemporary Pilates did we come from? Are
Yeah,
we
was that
classical
resolved?
enough Pilates teachers? You know what I mean? There's no, and now everyone's focused on that
Mm-hmm.
instead of focusing on making decisions about their businesses and serving themselves and their clients.
Yeah, so it sounds like, and I mean, I've gotten this much of it, it sounds like you made a decision like, here's why I'm here. I'm here for my clients. I'm here to show up for this work. What's going on over here doesn't have to be my problem. They get to think whatever they want, which can be a very loving feeling. Like it doesn't have, or a loving thought, like it doesn't even have to be this big, like horrible, like, you know, they just need to do X, Y, Z. It can be like they get to go think whatever they want,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds like what you did.
Yeah.
And you showed up as the person you wanted to be in that situation. We can't control what goes on in the world in some cases, right? There are some things we can control, and then there are other things that are just completely out of our hands. We
I
can't.
think that's a problem in, not a problem. I think that's an issue that comes up a lot with those of us who do kind of one-on-one personal work with folks, whether we're doing it on the coaching side like you do, but also whether we're doing it on like the personal training, the Pilates, yoga, you know, nutrition, whatever side we're working on, because we we feel like there are certain things we can control, right? Like when I'm looking at you on that screen, I can say to you, make sure your pelvis doesn't move, get your back down, like do this, 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 and this. Suddenly the exercise is better for them, not necessarily easier, but better. They feel it, they get it. And so we sort of feel like there's a lot of what we do that, and I feel like a lot of us get into it because we like to control things, right? Like
Yeah.
I always said when I had my PhD that I like doing ethics because I
You
like to tell
what?
people what to do. Ethics, right?
Yeah. I mean, but here's the difference, right? Like you absolutely can create opportunity for things to be a certain way. You absolutely can create opportunity for people to think or have a thought about something, right? Or to experience something. And then there are things like you had this situation that was very external to you where somebody made a decision that they were going to send cease and desist letters. And then people made decisions based on how they wanted to interact with that, right? Those things weren't in your control, but what was how you wanted to show up. And so you can decide, right? Like, who am I going to be in this situation and why? Why do I want to be more of this person, me, right? In this way, what is the impact I'd like to create the opportunity to have? And that's the kind of thing that really helps to have a foundation for, so that when, as we said at the beginning of this whole talk, like the shit comes downstream or however you want to word it, right? You
Mm-hmm.
already kind of know, like, here's the person I want to be. Here's why. It's not based on this external validation that I've been striving for and this people pleasing that I was taught to be a part of. It's based on this solid reason why. And I love that. And I'm going to engage with this. And here's what that's going to look like. Right?
Right, right. Like if I know that's coming, I can do things to prepare.
Yes, it's always coming. So the other thing I love to teach is that we will be solving problems throughout our lives. Like sometimes we think, oh, when things get better, oh, when nothing has gone wrong, right? Like, well, you just let me know where that is, like when that's going to happen, because there is this concept of like the 50-50 of life. Maybe you've heard of it. Like there's going to be good and bad, right? There's going to be good and evil. And in your life, there are going to be amazing times and dreadful times. Like it's just sort of the way the universe works. And when we start expecting everything to be good all the time or for us to be happy all the time, that's when we're disappointed. So what if we just plan on part of life is solving problems? What kind of problems would I like to set myself up to solve? Who do I want to be in the process of problem solving? Right? It can also help you choose your work. Like there are problems I really don't want to solve. I used to work in the public school system. I don't want to solve those problems, right? At one time I did. And then I changed my mind. right? So
Yeah.
you're allowed to change your mind and you get to decide what kind of problems you want to solve.
That's interesting, right? Because most of us feel like the problems just kind of show up
Yeah, sometimes they do, right?
and we still have to solve them.
Yeah, we get to if we're lucky, right?
Right, right. And a lot of times that is true. The problems that show up are not things that we can even be related to or solve.
Yeah, sometimes we have to find a way to live with something. Like there are all different ranges of things that my clients bring, to the table. Sometimes it's relationships, like how to handle a relationship with your child, a grown child, right? Or a spouse, making decisions around those kinds of relationships. Sometimes it's making decisions around relocation where, someone's been told like you are relocating. Like, what's that going to look like? How do you want to decide what you're going to do? You can go, you cannot go. And each of those, is going to have a set of problems that you get to solve. Right?
Right. I mean, I remember a big, a big place in my life, right, when I started to open up to more of these kinds of discussions like we're having, is when we had the opportunity to move to Turks and Caicos.
Mm,
And my husband was offered a job while we were there, and I was teaching a Pilates workshop. We were there for a week, and I was offered a job as well, but his job had a 2-week turnaround
okay.
because it was as an executive chef.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like embedded on the main line of Philadelphia. Like we had the house, we had the car, I had the studios, the whole thing. And I just looked at Tony and I said, babe, if we don't do this, we're going to be sitting here in this Center Hall Stone Colonial 10 years from now, wondering why we didn't. Because
Yeah.
we're going to be stuck in the same place. We can do it. If we don't like it, we can come back. It's
Yeah.
fine. Like, and I'm telling you, so many people didn't understand the decision, right? My father was somehow convinced that I was like on the lam, even though I kept trying to explain to him that you don't get work permits in other countries without police clearance,
Oh,
credit checks and all of these things. Just like working here, like you need a green card.
yeah.
And we don't just let everybody in.
Mm-hmm.
And he still like never quite got that, was always like convinced that there must be something nefarious going on, because who jumps up in like a several week period and sells everything and moves to the Caribbean?
And you're like, I do.
Me. I did that.
Yeah.
And then obviously I came back, to New York City, and that's fine too. Still on
Mm-hmm.
an island, still near the water.
Yeah.
But it's these kind of major, I feel like life does sometimes hand us these major opportunities to make a shift and to make a change. And even though we were there for a solid 6 years, so it was a good change, and it was a change that needed to happen, and then we were able to come back. But that was, I mean, talk about major decisions and talk about things that had to all, happen very quickly to kind of fall into place. And in a world where so many of us just want to control everything,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
At some point you had to think like there was no control, right? Like there is a point where you jump, you make the decision, and then the self-trust piece has to come in where you're like, I will be able to figure this out. I can take the next step forward. If we don't love it, we can make a different decision, right? Like you had to create comfort for your nervous system in that whole process.
right,
Or
right.
your primal wiring, channel 1, would have popped in and been like, hello, like way too much risk, way too much effort. Let's go crawl in like under the covers and hide. Like, let's not go here right now. But I also love how you described like the moment where you were talking with your husband and you're like, if we don't do this, then at some point we're going to be looking back on this. And so in your brain, it sounds like you almost had like a video camera to look ahead of like, here is one path and here is another path. And the person I want to be more of takes this path, right?
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. I was like, I want to be that person.
Yeah.
I want to be the person who moves to the Caribbean.
Totally, right? And so that is the vision that I help people generate for themselves, right? We all sort of have that capacity to do that automatically, but we don't always call it in with timing to apply to make a powerful decision. Sometimes it's just, we're seeing glimpses of what could be, but we're not channeling it into this organized structure to then apply it to our lives really impactfully.
Right. And I mean, and it's interesting now because, for those folks who think that it just becomes easy kind of once you make a decision like that, it absolutely does not, because I have to remind myself every single time a major decision like that comes up.
Yeah.
That I was able to do that super hard thing.
Yeah. I mean, you have
and that it worked out.
Right. So it's helpful. You've got that evidence to rely on. But the reason it never gets easier to make decisions like that is because you have a human brain. Like you're not supposed to be able to do that. You were wired for survival first, and then prefrontal cortex part of your brain came about later, where we're like, oh, we could like plan ahead and defer, pleasure and like create stuff. But initially it was just like, let's eat, sleep, and make more of us and make sure that we survive. That's how we're wired.
Right. And that's, whenever I talk to one of my clients who's, stressed out and maybe, gains a couple of pounds like during that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, basically, I said, your lizard brain just went, there is so much stress right now that clearly food's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Like, I think we all have to understand that, right? That part of our brain really does, when we're under any kind of stress. It could be even too much physical stress. I deal with over-exercisers all the time who are like, I'm taking 3 classes a day.
Yeah.
Why do I feel crappy and I'm not losing weight?
Yeah.
And I'm like, because basically that much physical work in your body makes your brain, makes your nervous system think that something horrible must be going on. You must be in a forced labor camp. You must be like this is not good. And therefore your body's like, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna store a little fat right now.
Yeah. Just in case.
You never know.
Like we're being threatened. Like this is a problem, right? Like your brain is really keyed in to survival. So whatever it will take to help you survive. And some people don't eat when they're under stress, right? But like what you just talked about was like over-exercising. You know what? There are a whole bunch of overing things that people do to like avoid feeling the terrible stuff that comes up, or the stress or the anxiousness or the overwhelm. And boy, have we had a lot over the last couple of years, right? So like you'll see it over shopping, or, I'm going to say here, overspending, overeating, over Facebooking, over Instagram. Here, where's the camera? More technology, or overworking, right? We call that buffering in my line of work. Say we're buffering, and we're doing that in order to not feel the stuff that's coming up. But if we would let that feeling come in, it would just be like a little indicator light, like, okay, wait, what is it? What am I feeling right now? What if I just let that come in? And then I teach again, your thoughts create those feelings. So now the place that we can adjust here is what we're thinking, what we're believing, what we're buying into and leaning into. And the example I like to give here is if you go to a party, and maybe some of you guys have parties coming up because it's the holiday season. I don't know how open it is everywhere right now, but some people have parties to go to, right? And let's say you're standing there, there's 50 people, and you start talking to this one person and you're like, oh my God, this conversation, I can't take it. But you keep talking to them and it's the same thing. And you're just like, it's going to be the same thing all night long if I stand here and talk to this person. You can stand there and talk to that person. Okay. I call that entertaining, right? And we do that with thoughts. You sometimes entertain crappy thoughts over and over, even though you know it makes you feel terrible and you don't show up as the person you want to be, but it's routine and you're used to it. Just like standing in that kitchen, let's say, with that person, it's like, well, it's easier than meeting the rest of them, but boy, this is miserable. Or you could shift your attention, right? And like say, well, who else is here? Who else could I be entertaining? And it's the same thing with thoughts. And it doesn't mean you have to sweep the other one away. Let's find out why it's there. Let's find out if we love the reason why we're entertaining it. But if it's not creating the results we say we want in our life, is there something else we can entertain that's also true?
Right, because we can change our thoughts.
Yes.
We can change our thoughts.
Yes. And we just want to make sure that we do that with awareness of why. Like, do we like our reason for moving into that new thought? Are we complete with the other one? Do we want to be complete? Is it not serving us? Like, there's some work to do there. And I like to just thought swap it and do pretty thinking, because that's also not helpful. That's just avoidant. Right. And it's as avoidant as buffering.
So really, I mean, all of the tools historically, right, that have been put out as ways of doing this kind of work of controlling our brains and really moving forward. And those tools, you know, I have found no matter what coach I'm with, no matter what program I end in, there's always, you know, some kind of dropping down inside, some focus and meditation somewhere, right? There's usually always some journaling and some thought work and some writing around the process. Now, why is journaling important? Because I found it, the journaling was one of those things because, you know, I was a philosophy professor, so I write and I've always written. But journaling for me, I was sort of like, I don't know, do I have to do that? I write anyway. Like, who needs to journal? Who needs a diary?
I'm going to tell you a little secret. I don't like to journal.
Really?
But what I find super helpful is hearing myself say things. So this is one of the reasons why I do invest in a coach, because when I am talking like this, stuff just comes out, right? And it doesn't feel like I'm pre-filtering. Like, I talk a lot faster than I write, although I like to think I'm a pretty good writer and I'm pretty expressive and I can get my ideas out on paper. I tend to prejudge them. So as I am writing, I am filtering, and that makes it a little bit harder to see my blind spots. Okay. So if I record myself or if I'm talking with a coach, it's really easy for stuff to just come out, and then I'm able to see what I've been missing. And a great question to ask yourself, and this goes for everybody, just what am I missing here? So if you're starting to feel something and you're like, oh, I don't like this, I'm unhappy with this, whatever, like you're really frustrated, confused, overwhelmed, any of it, just notice like, well, why? What am I believing? Okay, figure out what it is. You know, well, it shouldn't be this way is a really tried and true thought that'll come up that'll really tick you off, right?
I like that one.
Yeah, it shouldn't be this way.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, and then
should not be this way.
This way. You can apply it so many places. And we do have themes that we apply so many places in our lives. But then once you've identified like the thought that's creating the angst or the overwhelm or whatever, then go, okay, so that's what I've been believing. When I believe that, then I feel this way. And then here's how I show up. What could I be missing here? Right? So this is where you're like searching for the next person to talk to at the party. Right? You're like looking for the next thought, but you're like, what have I been missing? Like, what else is true? Right? Like, it shouldn't be this way. Another thought to have is this is a human experience, right? Depending on what it is, right? Or sometimes this happens. There are just so many different ways to like let things in your brain and then filter it through a new sort of, I guess, process, right? So that you can get a new feeling from it.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun, actually. Yeah. I mean, I was, you know, again, like women's studies philosophy professor, I kind of find these things fun anyway. But most of my clients do as well, because once you realize that everything that we're going through, all of it, including all the bullshit and all the hard stuff, is simply because we're human.
Yep.
And we have human brains.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what human brains do. It's not because, yes, there's mental illness. Yes, there is clinical depression. Yes, there are things that can be medicated. There are things, and that's where therapy comes in. We all need to know that coaching is not therapy. They are different things. Many of us have coaches and therapists, or, and vice versa. So that's, how that works. But it's this is what human brains do, and all we are doing here is just seeking to get a clearer understanding of how the brain works so that we can be more accepting of ourselves and make better decisions.
Well, yeah, and like actually use your brain to your benefit. Like getting to know what your brain offers on default is super helpful, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's been like routine for me for a long time, and here's why. No wonder I always felt alone, or no wonder I didn't think I connected or fit in, or whatever. Like we've all got some theme, right? And a bunch of themes, probably. Okay,
Right.
so you start to distill that out and you're like, okay, here's what my brain offers on default. Those are options. I can keep living that way. Like obviously I've gotten somewhere with all of that. And what if I was willing to see something different? Then what? What if I wanted to create something different? What would it take, right? And I can help a client work backwards like that. It's just super fun because you get to then create what you ultimately want to create. Like nothing's off limits. It's your thinking that creates your results, right? So we create twice. We create once in our brains with our thoughts. And then when we entertain that thought and embody it, we create in real life.
Right. And that's when it gets even more fun and even more exciting. And, and it's not easy, and there is resistance, and there is, all of the, again, it's just a lot of the default talk, and facing it, a lot of our default talk was put into us by other people. It was put into us by our parents. It was put into us by the kids in school. It was put into us by, society, by how we grew up, by where we grew up, by religious institutions, by, all kinds of things help kind of weave this person together, this story together. And I think kind of the worst part of that is most of those institutions have told us that way is the way.
Yeah.
Right. And that we should be this way. And then suddenly when you're like, but that doesn't feel good, and this really isn't allowing me to move forward in my life, and here we are how many decades later, and I'm still sitting in the same place, this is where the coaching comes in. So, I mean, for anybody watching the replay who has questioned coaching or been scared of coaching, I was talking to, there's about five of us in the Pilates business coaching space that are actually Pilates teachers.
Okay.
Right. And then kind of moved into the coaching space and got certifications and, did our things. But every single one of them has been questioned, and often questioned quite publicly in Pilates teacher forums about why would you become a coach, and why would you think that, people need coaching. And it's so funny to me because one of my clients, Nadia, who has a studio up in Whitehorse, Yukon territory, she now takes 2 days off a week. And the rationale was always, but my clients really want that 7 a.m. class on Monday, which I'm sorry, right now in the Yukon, it's like, minus 30 and centigrade and dark all the time. And it's okay because it's just 1 hour. And I was like, you're telling yourself that story, but it's clearly not okay, or we wouldn't be having this discussion about how you really want 2 full days off a week.
Yeah, so she was sort of creating resentment because she was doing that from a place of feeling obligated.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of service providers do. I did that for years because I felt obligated.
Yeah,
I used to work at 7 a.m.
Yeah. Or you believe like there's not enough, right? So you're operating from scarcity because you're like, well, if I don't do this, then I'm not going to have enough, right? So yeah, I mean, we do things from like these kind of, I like to think of them as like tracks in our brains, right? They're just, it's a thought you've thought so much, it's just become a belief, it's on default. And now that's how you operate. Well, you can rewrite those, right? And, also important to notice, I love that you pointed out the difference. Like there is a difference between coaching and therapy. Everyone should know that. Like, here's the bottom line. If you're not functioning, if you're not, living your life kind of the way that you at least sort of want to, like if you can't get up and do the things you want to do, you don't need a coach. Like you need a therapist, right? Go get that therapy help. If you're looking to make a change, just up level your life, like that's coaching. And you do it because, at least you do mindset coaching, because there are blind spots. You're not seeing all of the ways that you default to just old belief systems. Those are always
Right.
up for discussion. You can always change what you believe in, right? But you don't want to just do it through like mantras and, faking your way through, because that's not authentic. It's not real. And your brain knows when you're lying to it.
Right, right. And I think another myth too is that the new mindset must always be happy and positive and everything is
Oh,
roses, because
I'm
that
so
ain't
glad
the
you brought
truth
that up.
either.
Yes. So toxic positivity, have you heard of it?
I have.
Yeah. So I love to talk about this. Like the point of coaching is not to be happy. Okay. It's not so you can be happy all the time. In fact, I tell all my clients, I'm like, you should probably be like equal parts happy and sad, or elated and grief. Like that's sort of what the design is, right? So if you're going to coaching just to get happy, then that means you're really just trying to avoid the 50% negative that your life was designed to be. Now, maybe it's not 50%. Okay. Maybe it's only 20. Maybe it's 40. I don't know. But the point is, you're not going to get rid of the negative parts of life. Like they're going to show up. What if you could navigate them in a way that you still got to be you, the best version of you, right? What if you got to solve problems in a way that was really authentic and aligned for you?
Right. And that still means they might piss you off, and that still means they might make you angry, and that still means that you might feel all the
Yep.
things.
You were designed as a human to literally feel every possible emotion in the full range. So it amazes me, like when I start coaching with my clients, there'll usually be like 5 that come up. I want to feel happy, or sometimes I'm frustrated. I want to be motivated, right? I want to feel inspired. Those are like, people will kind of bring the same vocab over and over. And then I give a very incomplete list of emotions that's a couple pages long. And they're like, whoa, where did all these come
Hmm.
from? I don't even think about these. And it's like, okay, well, what if we do start thinking about some of these? And what if you're wired to experience all of them? Which ones would you
All of
pick most
them.
often? Which
I
ones?
think in her new book, An Atlas of the Human Heart, Brene Brown outlines, I think, something like 16,000.
I don't even know what the number is. I'm sure it's crazy, a crazy number.
And there's more. I mean,
Yeah.
those are just the ones that, in her research, since, she is a research professor, it's what she does,
Hmm.
like, 16,000
Hmm.
possibilities. So if
Yeah.
we're just stuck on happy, sad,
Yeah. Frustrated, pissed off, right?
then we're not even getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could be having much more nuanced anger. No,
Oh,
seriously, which could be much more useful.
much higher quality anger. Yes.
Well, yeah, because I
Really.
mean, frankly, higher quality anger then allows you to do things and
Hmm.
engage with that anger and engage with the causes of that anger in a way that might actually be able to produce some sort of change in your life, other lives, in society, in your community.
Yep.
That kind of anger is not a bad anger, and that is a different anger
Hmm.
from the anger at the guy who cut you off on the
Totally. It's
road
like,
going to
okay,
work.
how could this be useful for me right now? Right. So let's say you're feeling anger. and it is something where you're like, because you're believing it shouldn't be this way, whatever that may be.
Right.
And then you ask yourself the question, well, I like my reason for believing it shouldn't be this way. And you create your evidence for that. And you're like, here's why. And I don't want to give that up. I don't want to change my thought. Okay, great. So now you're angry, right? And here's what you're believing because it shouldn't be this way. So how could this be perfect right now? Who do you want to show up as when you're angry and you're believing it shouldn't be this way? What do you want to do with it? How do you want to create net positive with that? For you, for someone else, whatever. In this situation, right? It's a great question to always ask yourself. How could this be perfect for me? Right? Like another thing to apply this to, we may not want to feel good when someone passes away, right? Or, like I don't. If it's someone I really loved, I actually don't want to get to joyful if I'm no longer with them. I want to feel the grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, how can that be useful right now? Well, helps me really appreciate the moments I do have with the people who are in my life right now, right? Like, what if we use that? Those emotions are there to show us what's really going on in our brain. And then we get to decide who we want to show up as.
Right, because that, we always feel like it's the same old, same old. We're going to get up tomorrow. It's going to be the same as today, and it isn't. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that could happen, and the only piece of it that we have any control over is us.
It's right here. This
and
is
our
it.
brains. That's it.
And then
That's
that tells us, right? From there, we get a feeling. From that, we take action or don't. And then we create results.
Right. Yep. And in some sense, even not is still taking.
Yeah, some type of action.
Taking aside, it's taking an action, right?
Yeah.
So, Krista, this has been so good that I almost feel like we might need to do it again at some point. I do.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much more we can unpack here. Now, how can people best get in touch with you? I did put your website a link already into the posts for this video, but what's the best way if people would like to explore? I know you have some free groups. Yep. So talk to me and let people know how to best get in touch with you.
Okay, so I'm mostly on Facebook. I'm just branching out into Instagram, so bear with me. But Krista Kehoe on Facebook. And then I have a group called Perfection is Overrated Society with Krista Kehoe.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I really talk about like creating the construction zone for your dreams. And I'm currently, I should probably just let you know, I'm currently enrolling for a beta group coaching where I'm only taking 8 women. The price, it's only $8.97. So like, I know it's going to fill by this Saturday. So I don't know if this is airing live, right? But you can email me, Krista@KristaKehoe.com, or you can go to my website, hop onto my list. You'll get a newsletter every week. You can jump into that Facebook group, the Perfection is Overrated Society, and just, I
just love the name because perfection really is overrated.
Totally. I always say like perfection is actually the action that you take when you're operating from fear. So, you're afraid of something like somebody thinking something of you, right? Or judging your work or it not being received, whatever those things are, or of what you're going to think. Like you don't trust yourself yet with whatever it is.
Awesome. Yeah. So everybody, please, I encourage you. And of course, if you're a Pilates teacher, I'd love you to come work with me. Yes. But I do not do the depth of work. Know this, that I am a client of coaches so that they can give me this depth of work that you are going to get from a coach like Krista. And trust me that it works. It really does work. You don't think it will. You think that this is all old stuff that you were born with, that's with you, that you have to deal with, that you have to navigate through, that these scripts are going to be with you forever, whether they're serving you or not. And it is simply wrong. I'm calling you out on that. You're wrong on that. And you can learn how to work with your extraordinarily complex and human brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So thank you so much, Krista. Just hang out for a minute when we're done.
Okay. Thank you,
So,
Linda.
oh, you're welcome. So everybody, thank you so, so much for joining us today. And I'm actually going to have one more live stream coming up this week. 3 live streams in 1 week, but we are coming up to the holidays where there's going to be some time off. So, absorb the info while it is out there. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.